about that some. But to give you an example of what that if it is planned to last 10 years and you're 5 years old, that would be, so you've depreciated 100,000 out of the 200,000. If you then, at 5 years, understand, well, I can get 15 years out of this car, not 10, then the remaining life approach would say, I have 50% of the cost, or $100,000, left to recover, but I have now 10 years to recover. So it allows the recovery of the remaining investment over the remaining life. So that's one of the, I'm sorry that's so technical, but it's one of the things that the IRC recommended, and we were happy to move in that direction with them as well. I think I've covered basically everything. Good job. I think I had everything from memory that I had on the slides. There was a little bit more disjointed. I apologize because I was trying to think of those in memory. But I think questions are later, I guess, unless there's something that I misspoke that you'd like me to reiterate or talk through more.
Technology has failed us. My apologies for that. But we're on in the nick of time. I am sorry, Mr. Watson, and to the stakeholders. Yes, because this was yesterday. I would now like to welcome Mrs. Connie Joseph Louis, the IRC's financial analyst, to the floor to make her presentation on behalf of the IRC. Mrs. Louis is responsible for auditing the assets of Domlec, and we will welcome her now to the floor. Mrs. Louis.
Good morning. The IRC has already provided an overview as it relates to its mandate, which is contained in the Electricity Supplies Act. So it gives the IRC the authority to act independently in conducting its duty. We outline the critical parameters of this document or instrument. The Electricity Supply Act, the Transmission, Distribution and Supplies License, the Generation License, and the Tariff Regime documents. In 2021, Domlec informed the IRC of the need to initiate a tariff review. The Commission, Infrastructure Agency, PIA, and we got funding from the Agence Française de Développement. And we engaged the service of the consultant to conduct a review and to analyze critical parameters of the tariff regime document. These documents, which we received from Domlec, includes the application for depreciation study, the application for determination of the weighted average cost of capital, the application of the rates base, the application for the investment plan, and the application for the cost of service for Domlec. In 2020, conducted an audit of Domlec's fixed asset as at December 2020 and an audit of its inventory as at June 2021. Now, the fixed assets and inventory are critical parameters for determining what the average tariff will be, what the revenue requirement for Domlec will be. So therefore, we conducted the audits to determine whether or not the assets existed. So the audit of the fixed assets, overall, the objective was to determine the physical existence of these assets and to determine whether these assets will be considered used and useful for the determination of a tariff and whether these assets will be considered as a regulatory asset. Now, a regulatory asset is the asset that the regulator considered that will be used and useful during a tariff-making period. We also did an audit of the inventory of Domlec's inventory. Same principle to consider whether or not these inventories will be used and useful in the determination of rates exercise. And the purpose of a depreciation study. Why do we conduct a depreciation study? Now we know depreciation is a very large expense. As pointed out by Mr. Watson, it is an expense, it's a large expense, and it is a means by which it has to do with more or less the decrease in the value of an asset, like of a building, of a motor vehicle. So he elaborated on this well. So in November 2022, Domlec submitted to the Commission the application for approval of a depreciation rate. So I am just going to present the work that IRC did in finalizing that process. Now, Domlec submitted via soft copy to the Commission for review the undermentioned accounting data. So it was a total of 2,650 accounting records. So that's in terms of the assets on the building and construction, plants, on the generators, the network assets. Then on the registry, we have a range of assets, so that we take into consideration software, also office furniture, and office equipment, tables, chairs, whatever we have in the office to allow the office to operate smoothly in providing the service. And in this document, we received the gross value of the item, so that's the cost of the item, the accumulated depreciation to date, and the commissioning date of each asset. Now, Domlec initial depreciation calculation as contained in the depreciation rate. So we are seeing, based on the initial submission, what the depreciation that was submitted. So we have building and construction, plants and machinery, network assets, and we had a total assets that existed at the time when they calculated of 19.8 million. And we have the rates per category of assets. Now, in their proposed submission to the IRC, they calculated the depreciation at 17.3 million. Now, what we are seeing there, the higher the depreciation rate is the shorter the age of the assets, and the lower depreciation rate is the longer the life of the assets. So we saw a decrease from the proposed to what was existing there of 2.4 million. Following this, the IRC and Domlec had collaborative discussion. So the IRC, with the support of its regulatory consultant, and Domlec, of course, with the support of its consultant, engaged in technical discussion aiming to arrive at a fair approach for depreciation. This first submission, as I indicated, was in November 2022. The second submission was in December 2022. We had an updated submission in April 2023 and a final submission in May of 2023. The analysis done by the IRC. So PIA, which is the agency consultant group for the Regulatory Commission, and IRC reviewed Domlec's initial submission to calculate the depreciation rate study submitted to the Commission, as I said, along with the subcopy. The PIA and Domlec noted that the proposed depreciation rate resulted in a decrease of 2.4 million, as shown in the previous slide. We saw that the decrease in the depreciation expense was as a result of the prolonged lifespan of some of the assets under the category of building and construction and transmission and distribution assets. Domlec calculated the depreciation expense based on the average age of all assets in use, including fully depreciated assets, and following that, the IRC also noticed that Domlec utilized the whole life method to compute the depreciation. The whole life method, this is the formula. And we noticed that Domlec did not factor the adjustment for salvage value of its assets in the calculation of depreciation. Domlec proposed one specific life duration for each category of assets under the category of building and construction, and we found that it led to an overestimate of the depreciation for that subcategory. PIA and IRC agree that the depreciation method that could lead to a more accurate result would be to exclude fully depreciated assets and have them weighted using the net value of the assets, as it is more accurate. Following further review conducted by the IRC, looking at the items, which was 2,650, the regulatory consultant proposed that the depreciation method be adjusted, and that's the formula. So, as we continue in our deliberation, we convened special meeting with Domlec to get insight or feedback from the work performed by the regulatory consultant and Domlec's consultant. Both consulting groups participated in the meeting virtually and presented their findings to the IRC. Both consulting groups debated on the depreciation method that would provide the most accurate result to complete the depreciation rate for Domlec depreciable assets for regulatory and financial purposes. Following the deliberation, it was agreed that the remaining useful life be used to compute the depreciation rates. Following this, Domlec consultant submitted a revised accounting data that calculated the depreciation rate and the average age of the assets. The IRC again conducted a comprehensive review of the data. We recalculated the depreciation amount of the items, which is 2,650 assets, using the remaining useful life. We used different options. One option that includes fully depreciated assets among the list of items and weighted items by the gross value. We also look at an option that excludes fully depreciated assets among the list of assets and weighted the assets by the gross. The third option that we used was to exclude fully depreciated assets among the list and weighted by the net value. And then the fourth was to exclude fully depreciated assets among the list and weight the assets by annual value. Overall, using the gross value to weight the depreciated assets significantly overstated the contribution of the older assets, more so when the fully depreciated assets are included. In analyzing the average age of this subcategory of assets, which was building and construction, using option 1 and 2 resulted in a higher average age for the purpose of evaluating depreciation. The higher the average age of the asset was, the higher the depreciation. Based on our review, we found that option 4 was most accurate. In May 2023, the regulatory consultant submitted the revised report that calculated the depreciation method produced by Domlec's consultant. The Commission convened a special meeting again to deliberate on the accurate method. Following the evaluation by Domlec's consultant, by the regulatory consultant, Domlec consultant further adjusted the depreciation rate using the remaining useful life. In the final analysis, Domlec and IRC agreed to the revised proposed depreciation using the remaining useful life method as recommended by IRC's consultant and as agreed by Domlec consultant. And in the final slide, we can see what was the final outcome. So we saw that following the work that we did on the previous submission, that's the one for December 2022, we had 18.2 million in terms of depreciation, and following the final revision of the depreciation study reviewed by IRC's consultant and of course IRC's team and Domlec's team and Domlec's consultant, Domlec accepted the submission and the depreciation rates we agree upon or we are proposing is $12.7 million. So in the final analysis, both Domlec and the IRC agree to use the remaining useful life, and we agree to use the depreciation of $12.7 million. Now, this $12.7 million will be used to determine, so that calculation will be used to determine the depreciation rate of each asset under each category. Hence, our meeting here to determine, to bring forward to you, the public, to get your insight as to whether or not we should accept that proposed depreciation. So now we will go to the question and question segment, where we will propose the questions and we will hear your feedback. Thank you.
Especially the impact of disasters on depreciation. I want to make the link between what does the impact of disasters have on depreciation. Is it linked to that salary?
Well, I guess anything Domlec of personnel, of course, they are there, they can elaborate as well. Following the passage of Hurricane Maria, we saw that Domlec had a lot of the assets were damaged. As we know, that happened to us, our homes were destroyed and so on. So the assets that were disposed of, some of them had a scrap value. Scrap value is like the remain that is there. So you have a car, and after you use it for 5 years, the value it is $2,000. You know you cannot use $2,000 to buy a car. So the scrap value is the remnant that is remain after the asset. So Domlec, of course, experienced that. They had to dispose of a significant number of the assets. So the value that remained after that asset, we call it the scrap value or the salvage value.
As we delve into the question and answer round, I just wanted to be clear because we have a stenographer here recording the proceedings. So please ensure that you have the mic before speaking. So hold the mic to your mouth and speak loudly so that the stenographer can document everything. To our head table of speakers, there's also a mic at the head table. So you do not have to come back and forth to the podium. Yeah? So the question and answer round is open now. I would just like to encourage everyone to be respectable. You know, this is not an opportunity to particularly chastise Domlec or the Commission, and the questions should be pertinent to the presentations made here this morning, as well as the specific consultative questions.
You know, I just noticed for the Padu station, it was in place in 1967 at the back page.
It was commissioned?
Yeah, in 1967. Mm-hmm. So I figure by now it's over 50 years, right? What I noticed, you have an in-service, new in-service of 2010. I just wanted to understand how it came about, you know, just...
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry. I heard only part of it.
No, I noticed at the back, the hydro Padu station, the retirement schedule at the back.
Yes.
Yes. I noticed it in service was in 1967.
So there were some assets you're saying that came into service in 67?
1967, I see here. But I said you have a new one that came about.
Okay, so if the plant itself went into service at a certain point in time, when something's replaced, the date of the replacement is what now shows up on the record. So in other words, the original installation could have been 1967, but the assets that are there now would have been installed in 2010. In those cases, you see the line items. Does that make sense? If I understand your question.
Okay, now on page 13 of your consultative document, there are 5 questions that we would like to put forward to you, our stakeholders, because this is like the core of the material. We want to get your feedback, we want to get your responses So the first consultative question is, do respondents agree that it is not only in order but also prudent for the Commission to accept for its consideration the depreciation study submitted by Domlec? Again, the question, do correspondents agree that it is not only in order but also prudent for the Commission to accept for its consideration the depreciation study submitted by Domlec? So we want to hear your feedback based on the question proposed. We have a mic going around.
First of all, good morning. I'm happy to be here. From a layman perspective, I'm not an accountant, but your question, yes, I believe the RIC should, have a look at Domlec's proposal, and since you are a regulated committee, authority to deal with matters like that nature, I believe you should. But I have three observations or 3 points on this consultation. And I'm not sure I hope I'm not going too much ahead. The question of the depreciation rate study, is it going to direct or guide the process forward in terms of the proposed tariff that Domlec is looking at? That's one. And secondly, I think Ms. Joseph, you said there was a $12 million depreciation. I'm not quite sure if I got that, but I think from Mr. Watson, he said annually there's approximately 7.2 million depreciation on the assets. So I'm wondering what percentage was used, whether it's a 20% or 10% to come to that conclusion. And thirdly, I want to know whether from this depreciation rate study, a decision is going to be made in terms of the direction for the rates to the consumers in the final analysis that Domlec made the proposal for an increase in the rates. So whether that study will direct the rates that the consumers will be faced with. I'm not sure if you understand me, but I hope I'm not going. Just trying to understand the whole basis for the depreciation rate study.
Okay. In respect to your first question, the depreciation study, as I said, is critical. It's a critical component in determining what the revenue requirement is. So we have other consultations that will be done thereafter. So the depreciation study is one leg. Because to determine what the average tariff will be or what the rate base will be, it's also a formula, and in arriving at that formula from that. So it is a key component. And also, as I said, remember Domlec has assets, and we want to know whether all the assets they have in existence should be considered as a regulatory asset. Now, there are assets they may have, but we might not consider it as a regulatory asset. Okay? So we consider it as a determination of the tariff. So depreciation, of course, is a key component because it is used in arriving at the rate base, and then the rate base is used in determining what the revenue requirement is. With regard to question number 2, I guess Mr. Watson.
So is the question, to reiterate, is the question the percent decrease in depreciation expense? Or can you reiterate what your question 2 was again?
Yes, yes.
I have a similar concern. So
Let me just rephrase the question so that we can get a clearer understanding. Mr. Watson, he's saying that in your proposal or in your submission, you said that annually the depreciation reduces by about 7 million, and you wanted to know what percentage that 7 million represents annually, whether or not it represents a 20% decrease over time, or what factor that will lead to the decrease in the depreciation.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I speak Texan. Is that? So if you take the depreciation expense, and I think her numbers were a little different because she probably excluded the fully depreciated assets. But what we saw, apples to apples, was there was about a $20 million annual depreciation expense under the old rates in the old methodology, and we moved to about a $13 million depreciation expense under the new rates and the new methodology. So it's a pretty material. I haven't done the math, but 20 over 7 is a material decrease.
So, can I?
I'd like to answer the last question by Mr. Parish. Yes, so from a layman's point of view, the depreciation quantity forms just one quantity in the equation to determine the rate. So if you want to understand it in a simple way, a lower depreciation will fit into reducing the rates in the final analysis. So the higher the depreciation will also serve to increase the rate in the final analysis. So I hope in simple terms you understand how it impacts the overall calculation. Okay, so yeah,
So Steve Joseph again. And let me just state clearly, thanks for the invitation. I think it's important to recognize the public and civil society as a partner. I think some of us see energy as a public good. And so the consumer has to be considered as a critical stakeholder and a beneficiary of energy. Energy differentiates on our daily lives, every other sector. And you're asking us to endorse this as if we are a stakeholder that's approving as the public, as other stakeholders. So I think that's important. But I'm hearing some figures there that's causing layman confusion. So I heard the 7.1 million, 7160577 as the total change in annual depreciation. And one of the pages, if there were numbers to create, is the reference, but it's in your summary. It's in your summary, executive summary. And I'm trying to link it to that 7 million that was spoken by Mr. Watson. And then I heard that because you moved to do your analysis and IRC was able to recommend that you use the remaining useful life as the preferred way of doing the analysis, you arrive from a shift from a total 18 million depreciation to 12. And you're now asking us to endorse the 12 because I'm of the perception that the 12 will lead you to arrive at a lower rate that will affect the consumer. All right? As per 18. So, in other words, 12 million, having moved almost 4, 5, or 6 million, it will ultimately be down to the benefit of the consumer. Is that what I'm hearing? So if that's what I'm hearing, you have to further explain to me what is the benefit from moving from an 18 million depreciation to a 12 million depreciation, having used that prefer the methodology to arrive at that 5,000 fee. So I'm trying to make, and then you try to answer when you bring in a new figure, 30 million. So I'm trying to, follow with all these different figures. Please.
Just to provide an overview, we said we had a lot of back and forth as indicated, and we said that Domlec has assets that are fully depreciated, working. Okay? So it's like you have a car, the car has fully depreciated, it has a net value of $5 or $2,000, but the car is still giving you use. Now, the depreciation is an accounting method, and there are different methods for calculating depreciation. The whole life method was initially used by Domlec in determining the depreciation, and inclusive of those items were fully depreciated assets that still providing service to Domlec. Okay? So so as I used the vehicle as an example, it's still providing life. So in their first submission, they had those category of assets built in, and they used the whole life method. Following the reviews and the back and forth and the discussions we were having, we felt that the one that provided, I used 4 options, and the one that provided was the most accurate result was the remaining useful life. The whole life method is a correct formula. The remaining useful life is also a correct formula. But we wanted to get something that would cushion the impact, okay? And therefore, we use that methodology to determine it. So once you take out the fully depreciated life from the 2,600 item, then you have a lower overall net assets to work with. So that was one of the formula, the remaining life, the method, and excluding the depreciated assets was one of the things that provided us with a lower value. Also, I said option 1 or 2, if we weight it, is an accounting term. If we weight it by the different assets, we saw an overstatement. It was overstated. So we went back and forth, and at the end of it all, both parties agreed to the methodology. And from that asset, we are going to break down to determine what is the depreciation rate we are going to use on each asset. So what we found, and I think I noted there as a rule, the higher the average age of the asset is the higher the depreciation. And the lower the average age of the asset is, the longer the depreciation. So you have 2 things there, the life of the asset. Now we may kind of conclude that the life of the asset, the longer the asset is better, because they might not have to purchase new assets to replace it. But the flip side of it is that you have to do more maintenance if you have old assets. Just like if you have an old vehicle, you have to do more maintenance. They have old generators, they have to do more maintenance, they have to use more fuel. So, you have to reach a cutoff at a given point. So I do not know if Domlec official is there.
If I could add to that, there are, in the depreciation world for utility regulation, there are 2 methods, the whole life method and the remaining life method. Both are very valid methods. The whole life method is the one that this commission has endorsed in the past, as long as I can understand. So we used that method when we came in and we did this analysis. The difference is, in my view, as a depreciation expert, the difference is the remaining life method. When you're changing your lives, like we did in a number of cases, we're lengthening the life of the assets. Okay. So to get a little complicated, what that means is the amount you've already collected is higher than you need at this point, realistically. So the remaining life method, the primary thing it does is it says, if we had a 10-year life, $200,000 car, 5 years in, you've recovered $100,000 under the whole life method. If you were to stay on the whole life method and you move to a 15-year life, well, now you're going to recover 1/15. You're going to over-recover. And so you have to fix that by shutting the depreciation expense down when you get to 100%, which Domlec does. So in the remaining life method, what it does is that it resets the depreciation expense to the lower amount to allow you to recover what you need over the next 10 years for that car, $100,000 over another 10 years. So that's one of the big drivers of the difference. And I fully endorse this method. It's the one I would generally use when all over North America when I do this, if it's allowed. But again, I was asked to follow the pattern that the IRC had previously done. And when their consultant came in and said, no, we want a remaining life approach, I was comfortable with it, but it does make a material difference, in part because we were increasing the lives of our assets.
Now, the previous question opens room for discussing the methodology. So the second question is, on page 13 of the consultative document, does correspondence agree with the methodology implemented in the study to assess, evaluate, and develop the asset service life estimates and remaining useful life of Domlec electrical assets, including building and construction, plants and machinery, transmission and distribution network, and general plant assets implemented in the study to assess, develop, and evaluate the asset service life and the remaining useful life.
This is page 13.
Page 13 of the consultative document.
I have a figure on that. Depreciation from
the consultative document. 13. Yeah, the front.
What is that?
So everybody's clear with regards to the question. We just elaborated in terms of the methodology we use, the remaining life as for the whole life. We saw the whole life we had a higher depreciation, the remaining life, the exclusion of the fully depreciated assets in arriving at the 12.7 million. We're asking that whether you, our panel, are in agreement with the method, and if not, please explain and provide an alternative.
Paul, your mic not working?
Yes, now what I was saying, the remaining life going to reach a particular outcome to affect the rates, to bring it down. So I figure in that case, it would benefit the consumer. So in that case, I say we use the last one. Well, anyway you take it, depreciation would be if you have a high expense, then that would bring the rates up somehow.
One of the challenges I have in endorsing, it's because you need around 5 documents that you requested of Domlec. And that's just one of them. So depreciation, I read a number of other studies that you need to do to arrive at the target. And I guess it's a requirement of the IRC. One wonders what percentage of value does the depreciation study have in the full process of arriving at the final target. So we can endorse this, but we're not sure if we're doing it with all the information we need to ensure at the end it's going to be to the benefit of the consumer. And so this is why I asked whether the shift from 18 to 12 means the end result is going to be a benefit to the consumer. And that is the question I think most of us have on our mind. There is some apprehension to just endorse or not to. So this is where we're at.
Okay, so that's a very valid question, I think. But depreciation, as mentioned before, is one component of the cost of service, and it's a large one. So I can't speak to the overall result to the customer, but I can say that the reduction in depreciation is to be beneficial to the customer, all else equal, because your cost of service has the 18 or 19 million or whatever it is at the history, and it's being reduced down to 12, 13. So all else equal, it would have a tendency to be a positive.
I suppose the experts are the ones that, going to factor the whole methodology for the implementation of the study of the assets. But I want to find out something. I'm not sure if I'm reading something. If you, for instance, during the depreciation, right, or when you do your evaluation, there is, let's say, a generator, because of the longevity, you give it a high level of depreciation, and then the experts say, well, let us buy a new generator. Now, then you go to what they call, I think, stranded assets. So you have this other generator, going not at full capacity, but then you have to buy a new one. How is that going to affect the whole tree of things? If you get what I mean. Do you?
If I understood your question, if you add a generation, how is that going to affect what we did, or change the result, or change the expense? Is that a fair characterization? So, depreciation is a snapshot in time, and we set rates, basically we set lives. based on the plant that's currently in service. So if for whatever reason another generator of some sort were purchased or built, then it would originally go in under the same rate as it's like generation. In other words, the life that we have for, if it was a diesel, for example, the life we currently have for diesel. Next depreciation study, then we'd reevaluate to say, well, is that particular unit going to last longer than the others, or less than, or all the units change? So it's a snapshot in time, and that's why depreciation studies are redone periodically, is to update for things like that. But in the short term, it would come in at the same rate as the other generation that's already on the books. So it would increase expense because you're adding capital dollars, of course. Is that?
Thank you. My observation is that we going back and forth. The question is, do we accept the methodology used, whether it's whole life or
Remaining useful life.
Remaining useful life. That's the question. Now, having listened to the conversation here today, I think some of us who do not have an accounting background wouldn't understand. Depreciation is an expense, basically. So if you have 10 items in operating your business, one of it would be depreciation. And depreciation would be one of the highest expenses you have. And in layman terms, by reducing the figures they said, 20 million to 12 million, certainly does benefit the user, the consumer. So my conclusion is that we use the method that was used to arrive at the lower figure in order to reduce the rates. Ultimately reduce the rates to the consumer. Thank you.
And also just to add, with the lower figure, remember you will have a lower depreciation rate than would have been. You know, because if you have a longer lifespan of the asset, God forbid nothing critical happens to warrant a replacement, that would also mean that the company would not have to invest in additional assets or retire the assets based on the fact that it has reached its age. Understood?
Corey, I'm a little confused because there seems to be so many parameters being considered. It seems more like a constraint satisfaction problem than just determining whether or not you use the right methodology or not. You, for instance, said if you reduce depreciation, you increase the livelihood of the asset, you increase maintenance costs. So you've decreased one cost, you've increased another cost, you increased inefficiencies because new plants might have been more efficient than the plant you have now. So your operating costs might increase. There are a lot of parameters moving all over the place. And you're fixing all these parameters moving and you say, okay,
depreciation has moved on, so that's a good thing. Let's jump on it. But to better relationships between all the moving parameters, to understand if one moves up by 5% and the other moves up by 10%, what is the overall impact? And which should we choose? Because it seems like this is an engineering trade-off problem. And may seem like a good idea now, but holistically, I'm not so sure. And it's very difficult to process all of this abstractly. That's my thing.
All right, so what is that? All right, so the depreciation expense. Yes. The depreciation quantity or expense is just one parameter in the equation. Okay, so in the tariff review for Domlec that we are undertaking, there are other quantities that we will come to consultation on for acceptance or by you. So the depreciation, why we came to this consultation at this point, this exercise has been concluded and Domlec has finalized. Domlec and the IRC has agreed and decided now, when we agree, let's take it on to consultation. So based on the outcome of the consultation, now we move to the next quantity, which is the weighted average cost of capital. After that, revenue requirement. After that, cost of service study, and then finally the rate structure and how distribute customers. So yes, you are right, but as we go along, we will explain the best we can for you to understand the quantities and how they are derived. A lower, by simple terms, a lower depreciation quantity or expense fits into a lower final quantity for the average tariff. Okay, so that is the fundamental.
But Mr. Capes, it also increases the life of the asset and also increases the maintenance cost of the asset and may also increase the operational cost of the asset considering assets of newer technology. So it may not be just a linear approach as you suggested. And by approaching every parameter individually, fixing all other parameters, may not give us the whole picture. And at the end of the exercise, picture, and then adjust parameters at that time, or the parameters fixed now to the end of the tariff review study.
I went into it for a depreciation study one time to the transportation, and I was interviewing the transportation, the fleet people, and they were very worried about me moving the life because they were saying, well, we can't make it to the life that you're suggesting. In other words, they believed that depreciation studies would create a life that the company then has to follow. What we actually do is we look at the life that the company is attaining or expects to attain. So your questions related to like O&M or higher operating expense or these other things, they're valid, but they're not really directly related. We are following the operations of the company, we're not directing them. So all we're doing is trying to help understand how much per year they need to recover given the ages they're attaining on their assets so that we can fully depreciate them by the time they have to replace them. It's a company operations decision whether to keep them longer and create more O&M or keep them less, but create more capital. That we as a depreciation, that may be something that can be discussed in another one of these, but in this one we simply are following what appears to be the ages that the company and we believe can be attained from the assets that are currently there. And the methodology that we're using is a good, sound, solid methodology, and it is beneficial overall to this whole process. So I feel for you the questions are nebulous and sort of like, how can you answer that? Because this is an incredibly complicated subject when you get down into the details of it. But both the IRC and us, and the IRC's consultant, all agree that this is a reasonable methodology. It's beneficial to the customers. And it really is following the company's processes, not trying to create any processes in the company, if that makes sense.
And then just to add again, in the lower, I said that the fully depreciated assets were excluded in arriving at the depreciation. So, for instance, you have an asset that's fully depreciated. It is still providing useful life, but in terms of replacement and the concerns that we raised in terms of the higher cost that would have been incurred as a result of having the older assets that have been fully depreciated is excluded in that methodology. So you do not have that bottleneck.
Yeah, to just provide further clarification. When the rates are set, so let me back up a little bit. There are a lot of moving parts, okay, so as Mr. Nestle was trying to communicate. But when the rates are determined, there are two into consideration. Okay, one is that there's a test yield. In that test yield, if it is found that the rates that are implemented, the utility doesn't meet its revenue requirement because all of these quantities feed into what is called the revenue requirement. Then there's allowance for adjusting the rates accordingly. So that's one of the regulatory functions. Because we cannot have one of the ability of the utility is protected. Okay? So you're right, there are a lot of moving parts and certain things might change by the time the final tariff is determined, but when it goes into, it's approved and it is utilized to calculate rates, we monitor the situation. Okay? And there's also the regulatory, the period for the rates, it's 3 years. So it's basically, so let us say the depreciation expense was calculated now and accepted. It is locked in for more or less for the 3 years. And then after that, when the next tariff review comes after the event, everything is recalculated and revised. It could either go up or it could go down. So it's a continual process and it's not really a fixed. It's not fixed in the sense that it stays like that forever. Okay, so I just want to make that point.
Hi, I just need a little bit of clarification. So the review process that's being undertaken now with regards to the tariff and the specific component with regards to the depreciation and the modification in how that amount is being calculated is really to determine the percentage by which electricity rates will increase, because either way it's going to go up, correct?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Okay. We at the RC have considered a lot of options and innovations to try to mitigate or have a positive impact on the tariff for customers. As we said, towards the end of this tariff review exercise, customers will see what the tariff will definitely look like for the different categories, because one of the interventions that have been undertaken is the redesign of the tariff structure for the various customer categories. So at the end of the process, everyone will see what the rates will look like.
And just to add, we have not yet received, we do not know what the rate is going to be. It's not calculated as yet. It's a process. So the depreciation rate, the depreciation issue feeds into the other leg of the process. So we do not know if it's going to go up or down. We are just doing the first leg of the first tariff process, which dealt with the depreciation studies and the investment plan. So it feeds to the next level and the next level until we reach at the final calculation. So we do not know if it's going up and down.
Yes. We have heard a lot of talk about the accounting part. I took what Mrs. Nesty saying. What I want to say, the study that was made is to give us a comfort that if you say a generator has 10 years remaining, it's real. And I would figure you did that study and just give us this level of comfort that the remaining lives are good.
Okay, so if we go to the, page 17 of my report, it goes through a lot of different levels. In the past study, the average life for hydro is 44 years. Now, and keep in mind, the life is the dollar. The life is a life of dollars. So, as the question earlier sort of alluded to, you can have a unit that's put in 70 years ago, but you keep replacing pieces of it over time. And so the life of those pieces may be much shorter. Like, if you look at renters or you look at some of the electronics, there's a number of things that have very short lives within the hydro facilities. So 44 years was what was there in the past. What we've done is we've moved, obviously PADU is new. I think we have a 60-year sort of life expectation for replacement of materially the parts of it, not necessarily shutting down the unit itself, right? The other two, we moved out some. Instead of 44, we moved to 49, 50 years as the average service life for the components. Expecting to have generators, blade, turbine, there's a lot of components at a hydro plant that would have to be replaced over time. And those components would have a shorter life than, a hydro plant can live forever, nearly, as long as the concrete's there. But most of the components would have to be replaced in time. So what we've done is we've moved sort of the average for all of the hydro, I think, for 44 to 49 or 50 years. But that doesn't mean we're expecting everything to shut down in 50 years. It means that that's a cycle of a lot of the costs related to it. You can look at some of the details under plant and machinery. And, we said a life of fleet. So there's some assets that are fully depreciated that are older than 49. We're through depreciating those, and they're still working. As she mentioned several times, that those are pulled out of the calculations. And there's some assets that are 50, and we understand. But no, we're not expecting. This is not saying a 10 or 20 year remaining life for everything. I don't know if that's your question, if this helps, but we believe that there's a lot of longevity left to those plants. Maybe replacements will have to happen along the way. Yes, replacements will have to happen along the way. But we said a fairly long life. Would y'all like to address this further?
Okay, good day. Now, depreciation is a very complicated subject, and everyone will get the grasp of it, especially from a layman's One of the things I want to mention is we have, as Ben said, a $7 million reduction in the overall cost of depreciation, which will benefit the study process, benefit customer. What we have here is not a determination of the rate, but it's just one component of the different things that will affect the rate. Depreciation is just one component. Now, I'll give you an example of, based on the study that was conducted, vehicles. Domlec had vehicles depreciated over 6 years. So after 6 years, it will become zero, have a zero value. Now, during the study that just as was completed, it was determined that, and that's through discussion with people who are utilizing vehicles, etc., that possibly there should be a policy to reflect longer life for the utility trucks, the big people who use a van and pickup, which you use. So what you will find in the depreciation on those assets would reduce because you are now giving them a longer life, right? We also had with the paddle. Paddle was totally destroyed by Hurricane Maria, right? And there was significant replacement of the equipment. So here you have that will give a longer life as well, right? And I want to make sure that you understand. Right now, what we're dealing with is one component, right, of the tariff review. And some of the things that Mr. Nesty mentioned will come into play later, and it will impact whether the rates go up or down. But this depreciation exercise here is favorable for the customer because it means that less depreciation will be charged or recognized by the IRC. And what you will see is, it doesn't say the rate will go down, but it says it adds to the situation which was, yes, a downward trend in the revenue requirement. So cost would be, so there's cost of service study, there's revenue requirement, and that will come later. But in terms of the depreciation study, it's impacted positively by that. Okay?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Elizabeth here, and I want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this consultation. Just a quick question in regards to the computation of the depreciation rate. I know, Ms. Joseph, and congratulations on your presentation. I think it was a very comprehensive one, and I understood very clearly. You had mentioned that you removed some of the items that were salvaged or fully depreciated. My question is geothermal, the much talked about geothermal. How did we put that in place, and if we did?
Okay, well, geothermal is not factored in that because what Domlec will be doing, they will be purchasing the energy from the geothermal company. So the assets of geothermal will be managed by the geothermal company. So we can go with one more question on this area before we move on to the next. If not, we want to just get the consensus as to whether which method do we accept. Remaining useful life. Okay. Thank you. Now we go to the third question. Does correspondence agree to the approach adopted by Alias Consulting Group to evaluate the mortality characteristic or the lifespan of Domlec's assets in service. It kind of hinges to the second question. If not, what other approach could we adopt? Next. Okay. Fourth question. Does correspondence agree to the determination of the composite depreciation rate expense for Domlec assets shown in Appendix A of Domlec depreciation rate, which is appended within this consultative document? So it's the last spreadsheet which shows the depreciation results, the calculation. That's the last page. The last page in the consultative documents, more towards the back. So it's a lot of pages. I do not know if you had time to go through the formula. From page 29. In Appendix C. 27 and 28. Which shows the 12.7 million. And also it fits into Appendix B as well. It shows how the average age of the asset was determined using the remaining useful life formula in arriving at the 12.7 and in arriving at the average age of the assets towards the final back of the consultative document. So the core of that links to question 2. But we just try to kind of disaggregate to pull out some of the critical issues that we may have concerns. So we are saying that if we agree with question number 3, we said of course we agree. Question number 4, we agree as well. Now we are moving to question 5. If everybody agree, I guess silence means consent. Everybody agree? Can I see so? So the current comments or recommendations as it relates to the depreciation study, any other related comments or recommendation that we would like to suggest? Okay, I guess silence means that we agree. Yeah. So, there's one more question.
Just to be clear, since it's consulting, whether there'll be the opportunity to consult the public when the entire tariff process is completed.
Yes.
Because you're having us endorse in portions. But once you've arrived at the entire process and you have the results, that would inform the public a little more comprehensively to arrive at the full endorsement.
Yes. And also, if we look at page 2 of this consultative document, this is the in-person public consultation. We have a first response closed on the 29th of February. Then we have comments on first response and second issue. which is on March 14th. We have a second response to close, which is on March 28th, and a statement of results and the commission decision by April 8th. So we still have ongoing, it's still open, where you can extend the information to other persons to give their review, to give feedback. You can submit your comments, so you take the book, you can show it to other people. It's available on our website. We still have open, we have at least another 2 weeks to window, up until March 14th. We have February 29th, we have March 14th, we have March 28th, and our final decision will be April 30th. So we still have, this is for depreciation, and then the same will apply throughout the other consultation review. So it's still ongoing, you can still share your ideas, it's still available on our site. People can come in and bring their responses. We get it, we discuss it, you go home, you review it, you look at it further, and you can send your comments or bring your comments to the IRC. It's available online. And if you are not expert in that area, and you have people that know about accounts or about finance, or your children at college who are doing accounting studies, you can show it to them, get their feedback, and then they will guide you in providing us with responses as well.
I'm sorry, one question. What is the final deadline for all of the composites to be done with regard to the tariff review?
All right, so the IRC has prescribed timelines for conducting consultative session. However, it can be shortened if there's consensus by the public, stakeholders, and other participants that participate in the process. So, to just give you an idea, based on other jurisdictions, what happens in other jurisdictions, a tariff review process can take anywhere from 7 months to a year, and sometimes more than a year, depending on how complicated or if we come across any issues that are difficult to resolve. So we hopefully, in our case, we anticipate that we should conclude this exercise before the end of this year.
So I want to thank you all. I must say it was an interesting discussion on this leg of the presentation on the depreciation studies. I want to thank you all, thank you for the comments. As we said, it is still open for people to submit their comments to the IRC. If you look at the second page, it shows you the deadline. You can also check on our website and see the dates again where you can further submit your comments to the IRC. So thank you for this segment, and I pass you on to our Mr. Laptis.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Louis. The next item on our agenda is summary of proceedings by Mr. Kiss. Mr. Kiss, would you like to close?
So, I'd like to thank everyone who participated in this first session, consultative session. I think it went well. Constructive questions were asked, and we tried our best to provide answers that are satisfactory to the various respondents. So, we look forward to more engagement in this like this on the various candidates of information. One thing I'd like the participants to note is that there's a reason why we are doing this in the way we are doing it, because the Act gives us very limited time to approve the tariffs. So if Domlec were to submit everything as one package. We do not have enough time to review it in the manner that we are doing now to come to a proper conclusion. So we will tranche, every tranche of information I've submitted, we will have sessions like this to address it. Okay, so the next tranche of information we expect to have a consultative session on is the weighted average cost of capital, which we had a lot of back and forth with Domlec. We'll explain what that is, and it is one of the most critical parameters in the calculations towards the final rate outcome. So, thank you, and we look forward to your participation in continuing the process, and we'll do our best to reduce to make you understand from a layman's point of view, what these quantities mean, how they impact, and how they are involved in the calculations, and how they impact the final rate calculation. Okay, so thank you again, and we look forward to your participation.
Mr. Jason Timothy, our projects officer, to do the vote of thanks.
So I'm supposed to do an official vote of thanks. Everybody giving thanks already. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I know this occasion has brought us together. And first of all, I'd really like to acknowledge and impress that without you, the public and the stakeholders, this consultation and really and truly the end of the process could not be fruitful without your participation. Yes, we understand that Domlec has a mandate and the IRC has a mandate. But at the end of the day, all of us need you, the stakeholders, the customers, to be part of the process, because unless you are happy, a lot of this really doesn't work as it should. So I would really like to thank you all for your participation here this morning. I'd also like to thank my colleague Idona, because behind the scenes, she has worked tirelessly to get this up and running, get everybody here, and have that feedback and interaction. She has worked along with a lot of our staff to really get this where you are comfortable, where everybody feels that this interaction can happen seamlessly. Mrs. Zarok, thank you for blessing us with the word of prayer. It was very much needed. Mr. Kies, thank you for your valuable insight and the work you're doing into getting this process complete, because without your work, we actually wouldn't be as far as we are. We have had some challenges. Domlec doesn't always agree with the IRC doesn't always agree with Domlec. We've had our little battles behind doors to come to this point where we agree. So, it's really through your work that has gotten us here. Mr. Watson, you could be in the US, you could be anywhere in the world, but you have taken the time out to come and help pass on basically your side and your insight on the depreciation. And again, we've had the battles, and I think we all understand each other, and we're happy you've made the effort to come and be with us to help explain to the public, to our stakeholders, your side, our side, and how we've come to this agreement. Mrs. Louis, thank you very much. I know incidentally we've had our battles, and you've really done your best to pass on the information. So thank you for the work you have put in. Our stenographer, or editors, Thank you very much. We have to recognize all the people in the back who kind of make this come through. So we appreciate you coming and doing this for us. And last but not least, I would also like to take this time to encourage everyone to participate not only in this stage, but in the following stages of the consultations which are upcoming. This is not only your chance to understand the process, but to influence the process. At the end of the day, I think we are all cognizant that everybody, when the rates come out, if it goes higher, everybody is all up in arms that, why are the rates higher? This is your chance to understand what is happening, influence what is happening. The IRC doesn't know everything, Domlec doesn't know everything. We are all part of one community, and we have to do the best we can and come out with the best outcome, not only for one side, but for all parties. There is going to be some give and take, and I just encourage everyone to participate. Thank you very much, and wishing everyone a good and fruitful week and year.
This was a public consultation.
And thank you, Jason, for delivering the vote of thanks. Thank you to everyone for being here today, taking the time off to come here and understand the issues that are before us on Domlec's depreciation rate study. The consultative document is available on the IRC's website. Remember, you have until the 29th, February 29th, to give your first round of comments. You can go to the back. We have some light refreshments for you. Thank you very much.
This was a public consultation on Domlec's depreciation rate study. Thanks for joining.